everyone, welcome back to our philosophy of happiness class. This is our third lecture, the Buddhism lecture. It will be more brief, I promise. You're almost there. So for Buddhists, their conceptions of well-being would be a lot different from the Confucian conception of well-being and the Taoist conception of well-being. It might be a bit closer to the Taoist conception of well-being, but it would definitely look very different from the Confucian conceptions of well-being. So the Buddhist conception of well-being is very distinctive from the kind of ordinary life, everyday life well-being we talk about in our daily conversations. And it would be a lot different from the common sense well-being we have. Is more referring to, at least most parts of the theory, the Buddhists adopt a superior, ultimate, kind of metaphysical, foundational sense of well-being that's stronger and more ultimate compared to the everyday well-being we have. As you can see probably in the textbook chapter as well, the Buddhist conception of well-being highly depends on the metaphysics they have. So they try to develop their well-being theory based on the kind of metaphysics they promote. So one of the most important principles or doctrines are the doctrines of karma and rebirth. So for Buddhists, my life isn't, our lives are not this one-time journey. So I might die as a person, but then my death isn't the end to it. I will get reborn and start a new journey and then die and be reborn again and start another new journey and over again. So we are reborn over and over again. But how do we know? Who decides where I should be born, who I should be born as? So here comes in the concept of karma. So the karma concept feels a bit like an account. So if you do a lot of good things and save lives and be virtuous, you have good karma on your account. And if you kill a lot of people and do evil things and hurt people a lot and step on other beings' lives a lot, then you have a lot of bad karma on your account that cancels out the good karma. And for people who had better karma, they will have better luck, more good things will be brought to their lives, and they would have better well-being in this life. And in their next life, when they were reborn, they would probably get to be reborn in more favorable conditions or in conditions they would love, and they would have better well-being in the future. So if we live virtuous lives, we will have good karma. The more good karma we have, the better balance we have on our karma account. We will have greater well-being in the present lives and in the future lives. And the fundamental Buddhist virtues consists in, so they involve compassion, loving kindness, the idea or the heart of promoting the well-being of other beings. When I talk about other beings, it includes other people's well-being as well as other animals and insects and so on and so forth. However, it doesn't matter how much good karma you have on your account. All lives in the cycle of rebirth, no matter where you are, no matter what you have right now, all lives in the cycle of rebirth are deficient in well-being. And we all suffer. And the only way to escape suffering is by escaping the cycle of rebirth. And the only way to escape the cycle of rebirth is to attain enlightenment, to be in this mode of enlightenment. And so that's the basic framework for Buddhist conceptions of well-being. So we might talk about more ordinary forms of well-being and happiness, but there is this ultimate happiness and well-being that's over and beyond. And that solves all problems. in terms of well-being for us. And there are also two features regarding Buddhism, I think, are kind of important theoretically. So the first is the concept of no self. So I think for Buddhists, the concept of the human self is kind of, or the sense of human self is kind of illusory. So they would, so therefore, if I talk about my well-being, this statement, this terminology would, to a certain extent, doesn't mean anything to a Buddhist, at least in a theoretical way. And also, or in other words, they reject the kind of metaphysics of self. So they reject self as this metaphysical entity. And there is also no such thing as pain per se to a Buddhist. So if I break up with someone, I might feel pain, but this is just my natural, this is my mental responses. This is just what's going on in my head. It's not, there isn't such a thing, and that it's essentially and objectively a thing called pain. It's not a metaphysical entity. Rather, it's just what's going on in my mind. So what is this state of enlightenment? So it's a form of well-being superior to common understanding of well-being, and it involves several different features. So first thing it involves is contentment. So in this state of contentment, you would have no attachment, no hate, no delusion, and you would be free from any turbulent desires and emotions. Fear, anger, or lust, or greed, you would be free from all of it, and you would have this ultimate wisdom, and you would have this ultimate virtue. And I think the state of enlightenment also is close or coincides with this concept of perfect Buddhahood. So it's a state without consciousness, perception, action, and the like. You would have no attachments, you will have no turbulent desires, you would have no turbulent sensibilities and emotions. You will be just this one and in peace. And we would not hold on to this concept of self, and we would not hold on to pain as if they were real. So this complete state of wisdom and virtue. However, I didn't try to provide a lot of explanations for this concept of enlightenment, because as you can see in the textbook chapter, there are very different interpretations regarding this concept of enlightenment. So is it a kind of mental state, or is it a kind of, or can we attain enlightenment by satisfying a list of things? For instance, if I satisfy contentment, wisdom, and virtue, am I in enlightenment? Or is enlightenment about fulfilling certain things in our human nature? Or is it a form of a pessimic state? Or is it about a state of wisdom? So people have disagreed regarding this. You can see that especially in the textbook chapter. So what the textbook chapter is trying to do is to present you with different interpretations regarding this concept, and trying to give the reasoning for and against these different interpretations. So that's what the textbook is doing. But this is only from the analytical perspective. So if you go into the Buddhism texts from different perspectives, there will be even more ways to interpret. There will even be more different perspectives to interpret. So I feel like, and sometimes, this is my personal feeling, this can be completely wrong as well, because I don't have a lot of experience of studying Buddhism. I feel like some people might argue that the state of enlightenment is also like the Taoist way. It's not something you can communicate or teach, or at least reduce to. So you can't really reduce this concept to a list of statements or a list of objective things that you can actually fully describe it by language. Or at least the best way to learn it is not to find better language to capture it, but instead to become this person who has more wisdom, and to increase our wisdom through lives, through cycles of rebirth. So so I didn't try to explain this a lot because I felt like there are so many different ways to interpret this concept, and it's very hard to cover them all in this lecture. And also, is it necessarily the best way to understand this concept by presenting you with the interpretation and analyzing them? Well, of course, analyzing them and thinking about them, asking questions about them, thinking about the arguments for and against them would be beneficial for understanding. But then maybe it's also important that I don't try to squeeze all of that into this one lecture. So I wanted to let you navigate this more. So I'm really curious which one of the interpretations in the textbook you like, or if you had your own understanding and interpretations. So if you have some thoughts, definitely let me know in the discussion spaces. I'm really curious about this. And if this idea kind of resonates with you, or thinks is helpful to you to some extent, I also highly encourage you to read more about these texts and read more about Buddhism. Yeah, again, it's very hard to explain a concept like Buddhism in one class or in one mini lecture. I really hope that I had more space and time to discuss this with all of you. And I think a lot of what I'm presenting here is very simplified. And if I'm honest with you, I don't specialize in studying Buddhism, and I don't have much experience in this. But I still think it's such an important topic throughout the philosophy of history that I should not avoid it simply because I'm not an expert in it. So I tried my best to learn about it and to present it here. But so I wanted to highlight that I can be totally wrong about these ideas in this lecture. If you feel like some of it is false, please let me know. Although I try my best to check that I'm not giving wrong information here. And no matter how hard I tried, a lot of this would be very oversimplified, right? If you had the bigger and more detailed picture of Buddhism, so if we had a better picture of Buddhism, some of our arguments or objections might change as well, right? So if you're interested in these ideas, or if you find some of the ideas unsettling or problematic, I would highly encourage you to go deeper into the text, into the history, and navigate more. So that's it for the lecture this week. Thank you so much for bearing with me throughout the lectures, and see you in next week's lectures. Let me know more about your experiences reading the text, and I hope you have a great week.